Well, what's up, guys? So, hey, man, we are in week 2 of our series, Welcome Home. If I haven't met you, I'm Travis. I'm the college pastor here. And we're going to be in Luke 15 tonight. If you have a Bible, I invite you to grab it. If you don't, the verses will be behind me on the screens. And so I invite you to go to Luke chapter 15, going to be in the Gospel of Luke, actually in that chapter for the next 3 weeks. And so a lot for us to glean from these verses that we're about to read over the next few weeks together. But to give us traction for where we're going, so whenever I was in high school, I played football, and I was trying to become the starting defensive end at this new school that I went to, because I transferred my junior year to a new school, and we were in two-a-days, and I thought, man, this is my chance to get that position. And two-a-days, if you're unaware of what that looks like, you're at the field house by about 8 a.m., if not earlier, and then you're going to be at practice until like 5 or 6 p.m. Every single day leading up to the season starting and all the scrimmages and all that stuff with preseason. And so we're at the end of the week, and I have a really good friend, and he was the starting running back for another school across town. And he said, hey, man, why don't we hang out tonight? And so I should have known from the very beginning whenever he said, let's hang out, but we're not available, and I'm not free really till about 9:30. And so since I was already so tired, and we both had scrimmages the next day, so it was Friday. We had scrimmages on Saturday morning. We both had to be at our field houses at 7 a.m. And so we get there, we start hanging out, and I know probably the kind of night that we're going to have. Have you ever had one of those nights where, or just a situation where somebody is inviting you to join them in something, or you are partaking in something, and as you're doing it, you're thinking, this is not a good idea. Well, this is one of those situations whenever he says, hey, man, let's just have a beer. And so he hands me the beer, and I'm going, this is probably not a good idea. And like many times for you that have probably lived in this lifestyle, one beer turns into many rather quickly. And that night we hung out. We're hanging out with girls that we liked, and we stayed up until like 4 a.m. We fell asleep in my truck because I didn't want to get in trouble with my parents. And so I told them I was staying the night at his house. And so we literally slept in my truck, and we oversleep, okay? So we oversleep the next morning. I get up, and we're both like have that deer in the headlights look like what just happened. And he's like, man, I got to be at the field house. And so I rush him over to the field house. It is already past like 7:30, 7:40 whenever I get to my field house. And I walk in, and the bus is already gone. I'm thinking, this is terrible. I have no idea where this stadium is that we are having our scrimmage at. And so it was actually at Allen Stadium for y'all that are in that area. But so they were like, yeah, I got to go to Allen Stadium. And I was like, I have no idea where that is. So I'm rushing. I grab my pads. I'm literally trying to get dressed in my truck as I'm driving. And as I'm driving, I realize that I'm getting close to E, running out of gas, and I also don't have my wallet. And so I'm stopping. I'm about to get stranded, and I go into these gas stations on the way because I knew the general way to get there, just did not know where it was. And I'm stopping at gas stations. Like, I got socks on. I'm like trying to pull my football pants off. I'm like, guys, anybody know where Allen Stadium is? Sir, do you know where Allen Stadium is? Anybody know where Allen Stadium is? Just looking like a fool, just dumb, looking like a fool with your pants on the ground. And so I'm like, man, I cannot figure this out. And finally someone tells me, and man, my truck starts to run out of gas. And so it's literally doing this number. It's on fumes. It's going, like, I'm like, this is not good. And so I find myself, because of the decisions that I've made, stranded on E, hungover, late to my football scrimmage. All kinds of things are going wrong because of these decisions. Now, why do I share that? Because we all need therapy session every now and then, okay? But there's another reason why I share that, and it's because we are about to read a passage where he talks about how we are all like sheep who go astray. And sheep who go astray that find themselves stuck, stranded, wounded, and they have nowhere to go. And God, he's going to relate us to sheep. And there's a video that I saw I kind of wanted to show you. So this is, I don't know if you relate, but I definitely relate with this video. Y'all check it out.
Умничка, умничка, за обе ноги. Молодец, Света, умничка. Умничка. Все, операция удалась. Дурак!
Anybody else relate? Y'all like, man, that is totally me. Like, I feel like I'm out of one thing and I jump into another. And God's going to say, like, this is not a compliment. He's going to go, yeah, that's kind of like you. And except he is the good shepherd that time and time again, he will come and pull us out of the pits that we find ourselves in, or when we wander, he will go and find us when we're lost. And so while we are stranded sheep, God also is going to call us in this passage we're about to read, coin. He's going to relate us to this lost coin analogy. Why? Because while we have this problem where we are all like sheep go astray, God still sees value in us and pursues us. And so let's read the verses together. Luke chapter 15, starting in verse 1. It says this, it says, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to hear him. And the Pharisees and the scribes, they grumbled," and we're going to spend some time talking about that, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable: "What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one coin, does not light a lamp and sweep the house and seek diligently until she finds it? And when she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost.' Just so I tell you, there is joy before the angels of God over one sinner who repents." So a lot for us to track through tonight, and a lot of truth here in these short verses. The first point this evening is this. From verse 1, we see the wrongdoers, the wanderers, and the wounded. They're all drawing near to Jesus. And right here, just starting, it says, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to hear him." So there's this group of people. There's something about Jesus that's magnetic for these people. And they're leaning into what he's saying. And so the tax collectors, the wrongdoers, who would this be? The tax collectors, so Israel was under Roman rule, under Roman oppression, and Romans were not like a great group of people, especially whenever they were trying to have power over and dominance over all the other towns and provinces. And so what they would do is that they would come into a town, they would pillage the town, and often they would even kill men, women, and children. And then what they would do as a warning sign, they would put these men, women, and children on stakes. They would crucify them, and they would be hanging as people went out to town and into town, to give them a message that this is what happens if you cross the Roman rulers. And so this was not a great group of people. And the tax collectors, they worked for the Romans. So they were people, so Rome was like over a massive, massive amount of people without having any kind of technology that we do today. And so how they would control that and making sure that they would tax them and have their power and get the money they needed is they would hire people from the province, from the group of people, from within their own people to come and be a part of the Roman rule in the system. And these would be the tax collectors. And so tax collectors, they were known to rob their own people. They would get very, very rich off of their own people by stealing from them. And so if the tax that someone owed was $10, someone could come in, and because they had Roman rule behind them and at their back, they could say, "Hey, you're going to have to pay me $1,000. And you're going, "What? I'm ripped off here by $990. And they would walk out with the $990 pocketed, and you couldn't do anything about it. And these are the tax collectors and the people that Jesus is around and leaning in. And everybody, this would have been completely scandalous, man. Everyone would have been going, "Jesus is around even those people? Those people are even around Jesus?" Man, no matter who you are, you can lean into what God has for you, is the message that we see from the tax collectors having their own category of people. And it says then it's tax collectors and sinners. So there's another group here. The sinners, these wrongdoers, this would be the people that just the notorious party guy from the notorious party frat, or the girl that is known to kind of be in the hookup culture and hook up with somebody through Tinder, and that's kind of what they do. And or whatever person you think of, just these notorious people out doing things that most people would say is not what God would desire for them to do. This group of people is also leaning in. Now, another interesting group that's within this category of sinners would have been the lame, the beggars of the day, those with infirmities, those who were blind or had some sort of handicap, because the going belief in this time period was that if you had some sort of sickness or serious illness, it was because of sin in your life. And so these people would have also been present in this grouping based on the commentaries that I was reading. And so you have the wrongdoers and you have these wounded people that are just leaning in with all these sinners, and they want to know, what is it about Jesus? And all of us, like I said, and all of them fall into the category of the wanderer. The sheep, they would wander and find themselves distant and lost. And wandering, like it's kind of like for me when I said it started with one beer and quickly it turned into many. I didn't plan for that to happen that night, but I just kind of found myself in that position because of the decisions that I was making. And for a lot of us, we find ourselves wandering from one decision that just took us down a road, a long, long road of decisions that we wish we didn't make, but now we find ourselves distant from the Lord and feeling lost in our lives. And these groups of people are all leaning in. And I don't know what causes you to wander, but maybe for someone in here, it's that you started to look at images on a screen and started viewing porn whenever you were 6, 7, maybe 11 years old. I have lots of conversations with people that's when they start. And you can still remember some of those images. And that started an addiction that has led you to today, decade later. Still struggling with that. For some of us, it's like the alcohol thing that I've struggled with in my life, where you just find yourself going into this party life and you find yourself getting drunk over and over and over again, and you've just wandered off from God. For relationships, for some of us in the room, we probably found ourselves in a very toxic, bad relationship that led us away from the Lord, which turned into just toxic relationship after toxic relationship after toxic relationship. It became a pattern. And I don't know what it is. It might be that it's just like a circumstance or just the culture around you and the busyness that you have in your schedule. In this world, we tend to be very busy people, and you just start to wander from God little by little by little. I don't know what it is, but for you, what has caused you to wander? Because Scripture says we, like sheep, have all gone astray. What has caused you to wander? Because it's in this context that Jesus is going to use this sheep illustration. And it's for a reason, and it's this. And this is the reason we can draw near. And maybe you've heard this before, but man, it's so worth repeating. The church is a hospital for the broken, not a museum for saints. The church, it's this hospital for the broken and not a museum for saints. What do I mean by that? Museums, what you see, everything's just pretty, it's clean. It's in its right place. It's put together. And a lot of people think, man, like that's what I think of when I think of church. I think about the pretty people and the people that are well put together. I don't think about people that are messy like me. And what Jesus is getting at here is no. This is what church is. It's a hospital for sinners. I don't want us to miss what the gospel actually is. I actually had a student once ask me, she was applying for something, and someone asked her, what is the gospel? And she said, how am I supposed to define the gospel, Travis? And I gave her, if you want to know what the gospel is in 3 words, here's the most simplistic message of the gospel that I can think of. Jesus saves sinners. That's what I told her to write down. That is the good news of Jesus, that he saves sinners. That is the gospel. I had a conversation, and the reason why that's such good news, man, I had a conversation with somebody once. So like I've shared many times, God pulls me out of this party lifestyle, and then several of the guys that I used to party with, they're now going to this Bible study that I'm preaching at. One of the guys was in my wedding even. His name's Kyle, and Kyle and I would still hang out ever so often, and Kyle invited me to to go to hang out with him at the house that he was at, kind of like a little house party get together, nothing like crazy. And so I walk in, it's probably about 10:30 or whatever, and by this time, everybody had been drinking a while, and I walk in, and because they knew who I was, and several of them have gone to the Bible study that I was preaching at, it was just this really interesting dynamic that happened, because a lot of these guys, they took their beers and like sat them down, like, what's up, man, how you doing? Like, putting it behind them, and I thought, I was like, dude, you don't have to like hide your beer from me. It's holy now. And no, I didn't do that, but I walk in, and there's this girl there. And when I walk in, and I don't know who she is, and I probably don't know about 70% of the people that are at this house. I was here to say hi to Kyle and a couple other people that I did. And she goes, man, a stripper and a pastor in the same house. How about that? And I was like, hello, everybody. It sounds like a bad joke, right? A stripper and a pastor walk into a bar. And so it's like the beginning of a really bad joke. And she makes a couple of comments, and she's like, maybe the room or maybe the walls will fall down because we're by each other. Hey, don't get your holy water on me. And so she had started to make a couple of comments like that, joking around, halfway at least. And then I started to talk with her. And come to find out, she had a lot of questions, and so had never met her, and now I'm in this room, and there's like this audience listening in on our conversation, and she started making those comments, and I just asked, like, so what makes you like think that, like, why do you think that me and you can't be in the same room? And she talked about how, people like me, and she started having that conversation, like, I know that I'm not someone that God wants. And then I started to share with her, I said, have you ever read Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John? And I said, I think you might be shocked at the kind of people that Jesus actually wants. As a matter of fact, in this passage, I think, again, with the tax collectors, everybody would have been shocked. Certainly with the sinners and the Pharisees that we're about to read about, they are shocked that either of these groups are leaning in and Jesus is around them. But I told her, I think you might be shocked. And she had all these questions. And to her questions, you could say that I just gave her the naked truth. Get it because of her occupation, yeah. That's bad. I'm sorry, guys. I can barely contain the dad jokes. That's rough. I know. I tried my hardest to find one, and there it was. Praise God. Okay, and so the point that I'm getting at is very, very obvious. I invited her to come check out the Bible study that I was at. She came to one of them. I don't know about this, where she's at spiritually today, but just that message of hope, man. Like, she realized maybe someone like me could experience God in their life. And this is what is causing these people to lean in. This is why Jesus is magnetic. There's a guy that came up to me on last Sunday night, and he's this big dude, came up to me and he was like, man, like, I've never experienced God in that way, and he kind of started to cry, and he did the thing that all of us guys do when we feel awkward when we're crying. He was like, man, I'm crying, and I was like, I know, because I don't know why we do that, but we do, because I guess we feel awkward in the moment. But man, he was crying, and why? Because God was breaking through to him, and he said, I have not experienced God in that way ever in my entire life. God was breaking through to him, showing him that, man, the church is a hospital for the broken. And when I got to hear his story, this rings true, that Jesus is pursuing those people, and that's why they are drawn in. And whoever you are here tonight, I'm just praying that you would draw near. Will you? Will you draw near? Will you lean in? And next, what we're going to see is Jesus is going to point out this other group. That this whole all these parables, they got two side-by-side points that he's trying to get at. But when we see the introduction of the other group, and it's the Pharisees, the known leaders, religious leaders and teachers of the day, and the scribes, those who are over the law and even writing out the God's law in Scripture. These scribes, they grumble, saying, this man receives sinners and eats with him, and eats with them. The very ones. And this is the point that Jesus is trying to get at. The very ones that should be celebrating are the ones that are grumbling. This man receives sinners. How dare he? If you wanted to categorize these guys would be legalists. When I talk about legalists, what do I mean? Well, there's a quote by Brennan Manning. It's a book, we're reading a book called Ragamuffin Gospel by Brennan Manning as a leadership group here. And he says this, he says, the God of the legalistic Christian is often unpredictable, erratic, and capable of all manner of prejudices. When we view God this way, we feel compelled to engage in some sort of magic to appease him. Sunday worship becomes a superstitious insurance policy against his whims. This God expects people to be perfect and to be in perpetual control of their feelings and thoughts. When broken people with this concept of God fell, as inevitably they must, they usually expect punishment. So they persevere in religious practices as they struggle to maintain a hollow image of a perfect self. And that last line, if you didn't get anything else, they maintain this, they struggle and they persevere to maintain a hollow image of this perfect self. And these self-righteous Pharisees, they thought that they could just categorize people that are in and are out according to who God would want and would not want. And they are missing the next point that you can write down. These religious people are missing the mission of God. That's the song. Whenever you see like shake up the ground of our religion and like what is he getting at? He's getting at what we're talking about with this group of people. To think that somehow our goodness and our own acts are going to make us right with God and put us over other people. And we miss the mission of God and the heart of God. And what we do, what happens? And what is happening with the Pharisees here? Why are they grumbling? Because they're a pointing finger instead of an open hand. In their life, they are a pointing finger instead of an open hand to these sinners and tax collectors. And I pray that we would not be like them. The mission of God is to receive sinners, not reject them. Like Jesus saved sinners, that is the gospel. And the mission of God is to receive the sinner, not reject them. And maybe you're thinking, but doesn't it matter? Like, okay, I get that. And I hear this love message all the time about God loving the world. But doesn't it matter that people just keep on getting stuck in their sin? Like, doesn't it matter that they live a redeemed life? Doesn't that matter? And I would say, man, absolutely. Absolutely, it matters that we would live a holy life. But a person will not live a redeemed life for God until he realizes that he is received by God. I'll say it again. People will not live a redeemed life for God until they realize they are received by God. It is the love of God that receives us, that allows us to lean in and draws us in. It's the receiving love of God that broke through every wall that I had up and that changed my life. And that gives me the passion that I have now to see other people have that with Jesus because he loves you, man. And maybe you think, but they don't deserve it. Like these tax collectors, you just shared some pretty crazy stuff about the tax collectors. Like robbing their own people, they're pretty messed up. And I would say yes, and they don't deserve it, but none of us do. None of us do. Why? Why don't any of us deserve it? And this is just classic Christianity 101, Romans 3:23. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. All of us, we're all in this. We realize the field is leveled and even for all of us. We all need grace and mercy. It's the grace and mercy of God, and it's undeserved for all of us. And man, when you get this, when you realize, guys, that you were the one, then you have passion to find the one. That's whenever your heart will start to have this heart of God that we're seeing here. I pray that we are an open hand and not a pointing finger. Which are you here tonight? Which are we? I've heard it said like this: the picture is not the Christian standing at the foot of the cross with a pointed finger in judgment saying, yeah, all you sinners, y'all need to hurry up and come here. No, the picture is us kneeling at the foot of Jesus, and we have open arms to those around us saying, there's room for you. There's room for you. And not only is there room for you, but God is actually on this search for you. And that's what we see next as we look at a couple of these verses. Look at verse 4. It says, what man of you, having 100 sheep, if he lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one until he finds it? And again, in verse 8, it says, or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one coin, does not light a lamp and sweep the house and seek diligently until she finds it? Man, God is on this relentless pursuit and search of us. And maybe you're here and you've asked yourself before, like, how did I get to this spot? How do you get 1,000 miles away from God? One step at a time. One step at a time. But I want you to hear me, man, like you cannot out-sin the grace of God, and you can't outrun the grace of God. This is really good news for all of us. He is on a relentless search. And how does the shepherd find the sheep? He literally follows the mess that's left behind. Someone that's tracking down a lost sheep, they're literally following the crap that is left behind. And in our lives, God never stops pursuing us, even whenever we think, oh man, but my life's a mess now. So unfortunately for me, there have been several moments where God has tapped me on the shoulder whenever I have been over drinking again, getting drunk and throwing up again. And I'm literally hugging the toilet. And it's in those moments that we say the Hail Mary prayer. Like some of us, we've said it like, God, if you let me feel better, I promise I'm never drinking or sinning again, I promise. And I say that prayer, and I just feel in my heart like God's just happened, saying, hey, are you done running? Like, is this where you want to find life? Is this really better than what you were doing when you were following me, Travis? And many times I still said no, and he eventually got my attention. But I hope that you would hear God calling you tonight, and he is pursuing you, tapping on your heart, saying, hey, would you come and understand what I have for your life? We want here at The Way and here at the church, this isn't just for our ministry, this should be the church in all. Man, like we want the lost to hear the message of Jesus, those who are found themselves in a stuck place, that they are on E in their lives, spiritually stranded. We want them to hear the message of Jesus, that man, because every number has a name, every name has a story, and every story matters to God, and every story represents a soul. And because of that, man, every single person that we talk with, that matters to God so much. And so there's really two groups of people here tonight. If I was to categorize, like, what is my prayer for this message? Well, man, there's two groups of people. I pray that you would realize that you are the mission of God. If you're here and you're stuck and you're struggling, that actually you are the mission of God. And for these Pharisees, and the other challenge for us is, man, will you join the mission of God and not miss it like these Pharisees are missing it? So you either are the mission of God, or God is saying, will you join the mission of God? Will you pair up with Jesus and say, Jesus, like I want to be a part, like he said whenever he was sharing his testimony, TJ said, how can we make the light go further? Like how can we be the light and take it just a little bit further, move the needle just a little bit more? That is the call of God on our lives. Will you join the mission, Christian? Will you join the mission? I pray that all of us, whether you are the mission or he's saying, will you join the mission? I pray that we would all say yes. And next, what we're going to see is God carries. He carries the weak on his shoulders. Those who, man, they can't carry themselves. They can't do anything except for stay stuck. He says that in verse 5. He says, and when he has found it, so he's on this search and he finds the sheep, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. That reads way different than I thought it would. He gets it and then he scorns it and rubs the nose into all the mess that it left behind. No, it's not what it says. It says he gets it and carries it on his shoulders, rejoicing, saying, now I'm going to throw a party because what I value so much, what that was lost, now I found it and I'm carrying it back home. And man, God, he carries us. This is crucial to understand the message of Jesus. The message of Jesus is not that God helps those who help themselves. The message of Jesus is God helps those who cannot help themselves. We can't get ourselves unstuck. That sheep that you saw that just jumped into the pit again couldn't get itself out. And God comes and he gets us out. He helps those who cannot help themselves. That's the message of Jesus. Because the only reason I am where I'm at today is because I've learned that God carries me. And man, there's been times I've jumped out of his arms. I went back into a pit of sorts. And I'm so thankful for his grace and mercy that he comes back and he carries me again. I've learned what it is to be carried by God, and I've said this before, and I'll say it hopefully 100 more times, that I'm not a strong man. I'm not. I'm a weak man in a strong God's hands. And as Christians, we're not strong people. We're weak people in a strong God's hands, learning what it is to be carried by God. And I pray that we would learn that. And I pray as you read this passage that you just see the overall heart of God is and will always be to go after the one. And when you read this, it really is kind of backwards to what maybe you would think, because you see 99 and you're going, well, there's still 99, Jesus. Like, why would you leave the 99 and go after the one? Like, there's still 99 there. And so why would you do that? Because God still values that one. Because God values the one, and his heart is to find the one. And maybe you're the one here tonight and God is trying to find you. And this is in verse 8, the inherent value that God sees in us. It says, or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one coin, does not light a lamp and sweep the house and seek diligently until she finds it? This lost coin that this woman's got, I've got to find this. To drive this point home. Because maybe you think, well, but I have a struggle with that, Travis. I have a struggle thinking like I have all this valuable, and I know that, again, like it's God that is really the focus here tonight, because it's his grace and his mercy to come after us despite us. And he doesn't look at my track record to go, yeah, you kind of have lost some value, because that's how we might think. But because of his amazing grace and amazing mercy, the person of God coming after us, he has said, I still find value in you. And so to drive this home, so I got a $100 bill, and because I emptied my bank account, and this is all I have. I'm joking, sort of. But if I was to take this $100 bill and I was to wrinkle it up and just I have it in the palm of my hand, who's going to want this $100 bill still? Everybody. Y'all are like, yeah, it's in a ball. That means it might reach me. Throw it to your boy, right? And so, yeah, we're all going to want it, right? So I would go one further. If I took this $100 bill and I tore it, and I tore the corner off of it here, and I said, who's going to want this now? Y'all be like, me? Does he not know that it's still got value? If you were to find this in the toilet tonight, let's just raise our hands. Like, truly, if you saw a $100 bill just sitting right there in the toilet, who's grabbing the $100 bill all day? All day. Y'all see the point. No matter how many wrinkles there are, no matter how torn it might be, no matter how much filth it might find itself in, man, we're going to see value in it. And God's saying, listen, that's like me with you. I see a lot of brokenness, yes, and I see a lot of sin, but I also see the cross where I paid for it, and I see value in you where I want to save your life, change your life, and then I want you to be a part of you joining up with me and reaching others on mission for God. This is what God is offering all of us, but man, he sees value in you, no matter how many people you've been with. When you think, man, I'm filthy, God, like I've messed up sexually so many times, that's part of my story. You still want me, God. No matter how dark of a place that you've been. It says that she lights a lamp. God will go to dark places to find you. It says that she sweeps the house. God will go to dirty places to find you. And so we see here as we come to a close tonight and the band comes up, and we see that God in this story, he will go to the sheep that wanders. God will go to distant places. If you are distant, God is pursuing you. Man, God will go to dirty places. When God found me, man, I felt so dirty and so filled with shame. And we're going to continue talking about the prodigal son and then the older son over the next couple of weeks. I think there's a lot of value in these passages we're going to be in for all of us. But I can tell you that God cleansed me. He found me in uncleanliness, and he cleansed me. And so he'll go to distant places. God will go to dirty places, and God will go to dark places to find you. Because he's the light of the world. And to what length will he go? The cross, where he died in our place. Where he died in our place so he could reach down and pull us out of the pit and forgive us in his mercy and grace, and to set us on a new path that will change our life forever. God will go to dark places, man. So last semester, there's a student started to come to the way, but his first night he came to the way, I believe he had actually never been to church. Sat down at the table with some of our leaders and started to talk with them. Listened to the sermon and the service, thought the music was kind of weird, but he was like, that's kind of cool. Don't know how I feel about this. The message, okay. He said he kind of liked that a little bit, but was very unsure. And he was like, but I'll start going. And a couple weeks later, he had been coming for a couple weeks, and our leaders had joined together to pray for him, to reach out to him. And a lot of them were investing in him. And he went home one weekend, and some of us, we do have that break point story where God just brings us to this breaking point. And for him, this is one of the times for his life where he just had a breaking point, and he saw his mom in an abusive situation, and he was already struggling with so many things that caused him to question, and he was seeking. And this night he had seen enough, and he decided that he was going to take his own life. And he went to the lake and was going to drive his car into the lake. And he said he sat there thinking for a while, and he told me that as he started to drive, he said, and he just started crying and said, man, as I was starting to drive, I promise you, I felt like arms come around my body. And I knew, and he told me, I knew that God was breaking through to me in that moment. I knew that God had just literally, physically saved my life. And he said, so I drove here tonight. Right after that happened, I've been driving on the road. I got here. I came right to church. And I said, man, God not only saved your life physically, but I believe that he wants to save your soul spiritually. And I started to unpack the cross and what Jesus had done to save him, and that he had died for his sins, rose from the grave to give him new life, and he doesn't have to stay in that darkness, and Jesus will free him from all of it. And he said yes to Christ, and he's getting baptized next service. His name's Cole. He was up here last week doing that steak illustration. God changed his life and has been changing his life. God will go to dark places to find you. So if you're here and you're the one, know God is pursuing you. And if you're here and you're a Christian, I pray that we would all, to the question that Jesus is asking us, will you join me on the mission of God? Will you join God on his mission and not miss it? I pray that we would all say yes. Let's pray. Maybe you're here and God's calling you, and maybe like Cole. I don't do this very often. But maybe like Cole, you feel God calling you tonight. And what I told Cole is I said, man, you can pray a prayer to surrender your life to Christ, and he'll change you right where you are sitting right now. And you can pray a prayer putting your faith in Jesus, kind of like the one that Cole prayed with me and a couple of our leaders. So you can say this in your life, in your heart, giving your life to Jesus. You can just say, Jesus, I say yes to the call as you're searching after my heart tonight. I put my faith in you. You died for me, so I will live for you. You rose from the grave to save me. Here's my life, Jesus. Take it. Thank you that you would save me. Thank you that you come after the one. I'm the one. If you just prayed that prayer, if there's anybody here, if that was you tonight, with just every eye closed out of respect for this moment, if that's you and you say, I just surrendered my life to Christ, I just prayed that God would save me, would you just lift your hand in the air? If that's you tonight, would you just lift your hand in the air? Praise God. You can put that hand down. It says that when one person repents, that means turn to God. And I think we just saw 7 or 8, maybe 10 in this room, that heaven celebrates. So guys, if you are here and you are a Christian here, can we just celebrate what just happened, that people just surrender their life to Christ? Let's all say yes to joining God on mission. Let's stand and worship him together.